Hello, ladies and gents. Bit of a program change for you today if you follow the weekly schedule, but it's a justified one. The T26E5 Patriot, upcoming brand new T-rate premium heavy tank, just hit our test accounts yesterday, so this is the perfect time to do a combined review together with the other T-rate premium heavy that has been just buffed since last week, the AMX M4 49 Liberte. Now I have to say in advance that both of them are rather powerful, in my opinion putting them amongst the strongest T-rate premium choices in their class, at the same time also being as powerful or better in some cases than their non-premium counterparts. While I wouldn't call them game-breaking or pay-to-win, they are a bit of a power creep probably, which is an interesting change in the premium tank design concept. It's not necessarily a bad thing, as since you have to grind for a gazillion credits, you might as well have fun in the process, right? Let's just hope though that the regular tanks can keep up as well with the new kids on the block. Now I can imagine that quite a few of you will only be interested in one of them, so I did place some timestamps in the description below for both machines, both for the garage review and also for the obligatory gameplay as well. Make your choice and see you there. Alright, so now that everybody jumped ahead to the Patriot review, let's have a really quick inspection on the very recently buffed French Liberte, especially because it's a bloody strong machine. During the comparison, we will match it against other T-rate premium heavy tanks such as the FCM50T, the IS-3A, the good old Löwe and of course the T-34. Now I didn't include the IS-6 because that has preferential matchmaking, and I did include the FCM50T despite having the same because it just makes sense to put the two French premium heavies next to each other. Kicking things off with the gun, one of the sweetest things about this machine is the 232mm of base AP penetration that will simply murder everything when you are top tier, and it won't be hopeless in the higher tiers either. But if you just need a little bit more, APCR is available as well with 263mm of pen, making sure that you can secure those tier 10 kills as well. The alpha damage is quite meaty as well, with 300 average damage per shot, which might not be as devastating as the higher caliber guns on the T-34 or the IS-3A, but it's rather punchy nonetheless. Now this is combined with an about 6 rounds a minute rate of fire, aka an about 10-second base reload, giving us around 1800 DPM on the machine. This is about middle of the road considering the competition, but since you can deliver the damage actually quite reliably, it still feels rather nice overall. Moving over to the gun handling, you have a reasonably heavy tank-like aim time at 2.8 seconds, paired with a quite good 0.35 meters dispersion and overall nice secondary dispersion values. There is nothing terrible going on with the gun handling like on the T-34 or the often trolly Soviet 122mm. And as a cherry on top, you even have your 10 degrees of gun depression, allowing you to work those ridgelines like a boss. Moving on to the protection, this is where most of the buffs happened over the last couple of days, though it wasn't exactly bad even to begin with. The biggest changes happened to the health pool, raising it to 1500 HP, which is now in line with the competition, and to the thickness of the roof of the hull that was originally paper thin. One of the reasons I didn't review this machine earlier is because I was constantly obliterated by artillery in it. The large flat hull on top, both before and after the turret as well, meant that even lower tier artillery could almost always score penetrating hits, and the previously lower health pool meant that this often ended in disaster. Happy to say though that this seems to be not the case anymore, and although obviously you are still not artillery proof, you are not as much at their mercy anymore either. But back to the armor profile. Forget what you have learned about the French heavy tanks up until now, this thing is a beast. The buffed upper plate is the weakest part of the hull head-on, with 230 to 240mm of effective armor. Yep, that's the weakest part. The lower plate is actually really tough with about 270mm, and the cheeks on both sides are 290mm when you face them head-on. Careful about them though, if you angle yourself to side scrape for example, the angling on the cheeks gets negated and already about 200mm of penetration will be enough to go through it. Now, these parts are also typical weak spots for a lot of machines out there, so expect people to look for opportunities to shoot you here. The front of the turret is quite beastly as well, with an absolutely crazy over 1100mm of armor in some places behind the gun mantlet, lol. And in general is just a big wall of impenetrable armor in the middle and auto ricochet zones on the sides of the turret. If you really want to shoot it here, right next to the gun on both sides there is actually a small patch where only 260mm of armor is found, but you might as well try to shoot the cupola on top that has a laughable 60mm of armor and is overall a rather inviting target. You know, just a suggestion. And if you are driving one of these things, keep rocking forwards and backwards to try and throw the enemy's aim off as much as possible, as they will try to snipe at it. Now the sides and rear of the machine are of course complete garbage with only 40 to 60mm of armor, but that's kinda expected as well. I only have one remark left regarding the side of the turret, which is a huge target by the way. So, if you want to shoot at it, do yourself a favor and aim for the rear end of it. The front towards the gun has 200mm even on the sides, the backside on the other hand has 60mm only. Enough said. Right, up next it's the mobility, and once again completely against the French standard, this thing actually moves like a real heavy, as it should with all that armor. The stats can be a little bit deceiving at first probably, as the 40 km/h top speed and the 14 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio are actually rather nice for a heavy tank. The ground resistances are damn awful however, so overall you are rather slow and cumbersome. I mean, it's nothing outrageous, but it's best that you forget about the SCM50T like Speedy Gonzales feeling in your French heavy. The hull turns a bit slowly as well with 25 degrees per second and the turret with 30 degrees, so don't expect medium tank-like performance here either. And last but not least, a couple of other important points. The also recently buffed view range brings this thing to 370 meters, which is now more in line with the competition, but it's still very far from being top of the class. On the other hand, your weight might actually surprise quite a few people, as with 75 tons and a bunch of armor, you are actually pretty good at ramming. Never would have thought that I would actually say this about a French heavy, right? As for the equipment suggestions, to make the most of this machine I suggest to use a gun rammer and vertical stabilizers, and pair it with vents or optics on it depending on your choice. I would personally lean towards vents myself, but then again, that's just me. Considering its performance, I would say it's worthy of consideration, that is, if you like to play heavy tanks. Be as it may, the AMX M4 49 Liberte is a very powerful new player on the field, both among the premium and also among the regular heavies. Tankers beware, do not underestimate this colorful enemy. So, very promising so far indeed, but I would say let's leave the stats for now and change for some gameplay to see that French rooster in action as well. Alright, so here we are in our AMX M4 49 Liberte, this time around in a standard battle on Rumburg. And have a look at this. How lucky is it that we actually spawned right next to an SCM50T, so we can actually compare the two. Seems like our rather huge turret is even longer than on the 50T, although our hull seems to be a little bit shorter. Anyway, what's a lot more important is to discuss the speed at which we are pulling out from the starting point. Yep, this thing definitely moves and feels like a real heavy tank. It seems in the meantime that T34E is just bedazzled by a new funky paint job. And well, yeah, I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot of people out there who won't really like this colorful skin that the Liberte gets, and also the Patriot. But hey, we are not here to discuss skins for the tanks. Let's see how the gun and the armor works on it. Now this corner seems to be awfully busy, as is usually the case, so I was here thinking to myself, you know what, let's put this thing to the test. Let's see how it can perform under stressful situations. Now, I'm actually revealing my sight here, which is rather weak on this tank as well. to anyone who is crossing, who is poking the corners on those two other roads leading here from the enemy cap. However, I'm hoping that the guys behind me and next to me will try to protect me. I'm not really afraid of that IS-3 here shooting at me from this distance. It's actually the KV-2 who just doesn't give a monkeys, pops out, ignores everybody else and then shoots the big colorful tank. Oh well, not a lot of damage done, so no problem. And he also paid the ultimate price for it. So far 2 very easy shots in the side of the IS-3, one more into the IS itself, and well, that was a little bit of a low roll there. And the IS-3 still did not learn, so that means we can claim his life. You just see how easily and fearlessly you can move around. I mean, sure, if you overextend, the enemies will be able to rip you apart from the sides and the rear. From the front though, if you don't over-angle, you are able to bounce a hell of a lot in this thing. Quick shot into the T26E5 and well, good luck T71, not really worried about that guy. Now if I over-angle where these guys can shoot me, with my side, IS is really not having any luck with it. Or they could also penetrate my cheeks. If I try to side scrape, and then they have a flat surface to shoot at. If I'm moving straight towards them though, the cheeks are actually 290mm sticks, so good luck penetrating those. Casual blow up with the T29, we are on 2300 damage already, and this match was an absolute stomp. Sure, we were top tier here, and with this armor and this gun, you are extremely powerful when you are top tier, but it's good to see that both the gun and the armor actually do work as advertised. I was thinking here to myself, so previously before this thing was buffed, I had a lot of problem with artillery, so let's advance, let's see how I can take a shell to the front. And... oops! Well, okay, this doesn't count. The M4043 was actually hiding there in the corner just waiting for someone to pass and then planted one right through my sides. Alright, you got me. God damn it, there was a lot more damage to be had in this game. But hey, overall, it wasn't a bad test. Alright, so this was a rather effortless win in the Liberte. Unfortunately got short because of that sneaky artillery. But let's see the details. Close to 2400 direct and 1300 assisted damage with 2 kills was enough for 930 base experience this time, which on the other hand was worth only a 3rd class mastery in this machine. I think this is a pretty good sign on just how well this machine will do, and since it won't struggle as much in the higher tiers either as some of its non-premium counterparts, it's expected to post some absolutely crazy base experience scores in the future. As for the details, we fired 11 shots, scoring 9 penetrating hits, and we also deflected 5 out of the 7 shots received worth about 1500 damage in these only 3.5 minutes. It's also important to mention that with the also buffed profitability of this machine, we actually made 50,000 profits with a standard account, and we would have made 80,000 with a premium account. Not a bad pay at all for roughly 3 minutes of game time. Alright, so that was a very quick sneak peek at the Liberte. Let's now jump over to the even newer kid on the blocks, the T26E5 Patriot. Now with the Patriot, I'm in a little bit of trouble as it's not even on TanksGG at the moment, so I can only do a makeshift comparison unfortunately. Basically what I did is, I added the screenshot on the statistics from the garage in our comparison for the Liberte, and as for the armor profile itself, we will have to use Tank Inspector this time around. So, sorry for the crappy looks, but let's see those numbers. Starting with the gun, we can see right away that this 90mm, although quite effective, works completely differently from the 100mm gun on the Liberte. We have a very similar 230 average penetration, and we also have our 10 degrees of gun depression on this machine too, but the similarities pretty much end here. What we have then is a low alpha damage, high rate of fire gun with 240 alpha and 8.7 rounds a minute rate of fire, that thanks to its penetration is actually able to reliably out-DPM its competition, including the Liberte. The secondary gun stats are different as well. You now have a really good 2.2 seconds aim time, however you are slightly less accurate at 0.36 meters dispersion. And while that's not bad, you will see in the replay that sniping weak spots over large distances is definitely not the strong point of this machine. What's its strength, however, is that it fires APCR as its standard ammunition, so hitting targets in general will be overall a lot easier thanks to the higher shell velocity. It's a bit curious perhaps that the premium ammunition is not heat as you would expect, but a different type of premium APCR with 259mm of penetration. Moving over to the protection, you have the same health pool as the Liberte at 1500, but seemingly less armor both on the hull and also on the turret. And while this is absolutely true, don't write this thing off just yet. Let me show you why. From the front, the biggest difference is the upper plate on the hull that now only has 180mm of effective armor head-on. While this is still pretty damn good, don't expect to bounce the same amount with it as with the 330 to 340mm on the Liberte. The lower plate, on the other hand, is still quite tough, and with 230mm of effective armor, it will trick quite a few opponents who believe that it's a weak spot. Moving to the front of the turret, while it's true that you have less armor here too, with 280mm plus on your gun mantlet you will still keep bouncing all day like a boss. You only have very small parts next to the gun mantlet where you have only 250mm of armor, but then again the turret curves into an auto ricochet zone on the sides. The biggest bonus, however, is your turret. It's small, it's well-rounded, and even if you hit it dead center, it has 200mm of effective armor. Yep, that's one hell of an improvement over that big bulge on top of the Liberte with 60mm of paper armor. Basically what you have here then is a low-profile, much smaller target that's an absolute beast hull down, typical American heavy anyone, and you can even bully some lower tier tanks when you meet them in the open. Moving over to the mobility, the overall picture is quite similar, even if the feel of it is different. You have the same 40 km/h top speed as the Liberte, and a very slightly better power-to-weight ratio at 15 horsepower per ton. You also have slightly worse turret traverse at 26 degrees, but a much better hull traverse at 31 degrees per second. So while this is overall very similar, the Patriot at the end of the day just feels a lot more agile overall, so I'm fully expecting this thing to have better overall ground resistances. And last but not least, some serious differences in the other section as well. You have vastly better view range than the Liberte at 390 meters, which is really top-notch. At the same time, you just simply don't weigh nearly as much with 46 tons, so be a lot more selective with your ramming in this thing. Equipment-wise, it's really the exact same suggestions: vertical stabilizers, a gun rammer, and then vents or optics depending on your preference. Alright, enough with the stats. Let's throw this baby into deep waters. Alright, so this time around it's time to test out the T26E5 Patriot in a standard match on Karelia. And I have to say, although this was not one of the matches with the highest amount of damage dealt in this machine, although I will deal a fair amount of it by the end of the match, I chose this replay because of how special this engagement is. We will be going head-on against most of the enemy heavy tanks in a typical heavy engagement, facing off against some really nasty tier 9 guns and armor. So, let's put this machine to the test and let's see how it performs in these conditions. Now right here in the beginning, I was focusing on the paint job on the machine, and then I suddenly realized, holy cow, we have actually a heavy tank advantage which we are currently throwing away, as it's basically me, an IS-3 and an M46 Patton who are coming here to hold this corner, and we can expect a lot of nasty heavies to face off against us. Now, I usually would have probably turned around and occupied a safer position in case these guys push through, as unfortunately that shell dips like an absolute boss. But I thought to myself, you know what, let's see what we can do in this situation. Now, I basically have no chance to go through the angled upper plate of the M103 there, so I will have to snipe some weak spots. As you will see, I will miss a lot of these shots. Some of them badly aimed, some of them though, it's the gun. 0.36 meters dispersion over long-range engagements is not a guaranteed hit. By the time I'm zoomed in here, 25 times, so yeah, those guys are not exactly right next to us. Now we are here in a very strong cooldown position. The guys can only shoot at the edge of my tracks without damaging me, and if they hit my turret, I should be fairly safe against them as well. At the same time, they are in a strong cooldown position as well. T10. Only able to get my tracks off. Look at these guys, how eager they are. And again, only a tracking shot. So you see, I'm actually in a relative safe position here, although facing off against two tier 9 heavy tanks. But they just can't hit any point of me which they would be able to reliably penetrate. Now if I would move ahead, and whoops, there was actually a hit. Probably I just pulled out a little bit too much so they could get one through the drive wheel, which is what I have to protect here. If I would go against them though, they could easily penetrate my upper plate. Finally a penetrating hit, holy cow. Definitely had to wait for that one. Basically we have to play it safe. As for the match itself, all those heavies on the other side obliterated the non-existing opposition so far. So at the moment, if we can keep these guys pinned here, very soon we should be able to put them in a crossfire, and that's exactly what we want to achieve. Now I have to say, I'm a little bit tired of shooting fruitlessly at the weaker points of these guys. And again, there is actually a sneaky tank destroyer somewhere behind the M103 shooting me, luckily, without being able to penetrate me. So about this is the time when I think to myself, alright, well, this is rather boring indeed. I have to do something about it. I can't really do it while these guys keep poking the corner. Now that they pull back though, I think to myself, alright, well, let's put this thing really to the test. Let's move up. Now the IST tracks me, I actually block a shot from the Su-101 and then casually snap on him. However, the E1 absolutely correctly notices the opportunity, and look at that, how easily he can penetrate my frontal plate. That guy is now reloading. I did survive, but I'm in a tricky situation. I don't really want to go around this corner to chase him. I really want to get the kill, but if I move out, one of these guys will surely pop out and murder me. And I'm not really that fast that I can climb the hill and then come up on the other side and put enough shots into that guy to be able to take him out before he reloads. So unfortunately for me, it's now the waiting game. There are two guys coming up behind him though, so if I just wait long enough for him to turn around, then I should have my opportunity. I have to be quick though, I really don't want those guys to be able to pop out and take me out. With the rather nice rate of fire, I am able to put 2 shots into him before he goes down. Yay, we did survive. Now he could have of course easily turned around and killed us. But when autoloaders engage their opponents, they are usually committed to focusing on that guy, so I was in relative safety. I don't really know why we dunked that shot into the ground there. We should have no problem to casually take out the AIS-3, and now we can go after that bloody T10 who bounced us all day long. No, the top part will not be good, we have to go for the lower plate, which we managed to bounce somehow as well, but he bounces as well in return. It's really a pity that in replays we don't have the assisted and blocked damage counters, because we are actually racking those numbers up quite nicely, but we will have a look in the post-battle results. So let's see what pieces of damage we can still get. Well, the Tiger one is probably hiding in the lower ground there, but he will be jumped on by quite a few heavy tanks, so basically it's about finding the artillery at this stage. And hopefully not dying to it, because, you know, artillery. Now have a look here at the speed. We are down to 16 km per hour moving uphill in this terrain, and there he is. We should be able to snipe one in. Come on! Yes, thank you, 259 more damage. And that's unfortunately all we can do in this game. Still, 2000 damage done. It's not too bad considering we held up a lot of the scariest heavy tanks on the enemy team. So let's see in the post-battle results how we actually did. Oh yeah! Scout Patriot for the win! Not really an amazing game by any standard, but I would say it was just good enough to showcase some of the strengths and also limitations of this machine. So, quite an easy ace tanker it is together with a Confederate, and all we had to do was to keep those enemy tier 9 heavies lit for our team, collect almost 3800 assisted damage, and then hoover up some easy 2000 damage by the end of the battle as the enemy team rapidly collapsed. Looking at the team results, it seems that we almost completely negated those heavies on the other side. That poor M103 seems to have only been able to score a single penetrating hit this entire match. And as for our reward, 1370 base experience is pretty sweet. I'm happy to take this deal all day long. So overall we fired 32 shots, scoring 25 hits, but since we were trying to snipe weak spots on cooldown higher tier heavy tanks, we only scored 8 penetrations at the end of it. I mean, sure, we could have switched to APCR, but since I would still have to aim for weak spots at long range, I just didn't feel like wasting them this early on, as I could have easily required those shells later. And while we were undoubtedly in a very strong position as well, our armor did actually hold up rather nicely too, blocking 12 out of the 15 hits received, negating close to 2300 damage. I have to say, it was really refreshing to play some tier 8 heavy tanks where the armor did actually seem to work for a change. As for the profitability, we made 77,000 credits with a standard account and 116,000 with a premium one. Please note though that the net result, aka our actual profit, is not exactly correct in this case, as on the test account I get my premium consumables and shells with gold and not credits. Still, lovely profit despite firing a whopping 24 shots that didn't do a single point of damage. Alright, so this was then the quick review on the French Liberte and the American Patriot, two very powerful new players that you better watch out for, regardless if you want to play them or play against them. As for which one to choose, despite the similarities, aka great frontal armor, good gun, and mediocre mobility, they actually feel quite a bit different, so you can go with your preferred playstyle. Are you looking for a typical heavy tank experience with armor that can actually work and have a nice punchy gun to go with it? Then look no further, the Liberte is waiting for you. And if you prefer something just a little bit more agile with better acceleration and traverse speed, and better rate of fire while still maintaining a very tough frontal armor, the Patriot is absolutely worth a look. The Patriot is already available for purchase on the North American server, and the Liberte, as far as I did see, just hit the EU server today. As far as I'm aware though, on EU you will only be able to buy the funky skinned versions when they arrive. Don't ask me, doesn't make much sense to me either, to be honest. So, let me know what you think. I probably will have to restrain myself unfortunately regarding buying them, but my credit card is burning my pocket for sure after playing them. Be as it may, I hope this little review could help you to make up your mind about them. If you found this video useful or at least entertaining, thanks a lot for considering giving it a like or sharing it. Over the coming weekend we will have 2 more very good medium tank carries on the channel. On Saturday, the T34-1, the Tier 7 Chinese medium, and then on Sunday it's time for some hyper-aggressive gameplay with the legendary Object 140. As for myself, however, let me already wish you an excellent weekend. Don't forget to chill. And then I look forward seeing you again during the coming week as well. Take care and see you soon.